Hello everybody, I'm Delegate Ken Plum. Welcome to our show, Virginia Report. I hope when you're watching this show it's nice and sunny outside, because we're going to be talking about the sun, an alternative way to generate electricity, solar power. Makes total sense, clean, cheap, something we need to move towards. Let's talk to a local resident who's made that decision, Chip Lubston, from right here in the neighborhoods of Reston, Herndon,
Virginia. Yep.
Herndon, Virginia.
Yep.
And Ben Glenzer, you know something about solar power.
Yeah, I'm with Solar Solutions for All.
Wonderful. Thank you for joining us.
Thank
Now,
you.
Chip, you have some panels on your house.
Yes, I do.
You are a man who is getting your power from the sun.
Yes, I am.
How'd you make that decision?
Well, it started a year ago when I decided to take the topic of climate change very seriously. Mm-hmm. And James Hansen, the famous climate scientist, said, you know, everybody should be joining the Citizens Climate Lobby. So I did that. I joined the lobby. I went down to Capitol Hill and lobbied some Congress people for a fee and dividend program, and I felt pretty good about that, but I felt like I just wasn't doing enough. Like, I wanted to do something more directly to reduce my own personal carbon footprint.
Sure.
So I started evaluating solar as an option for that.
Now tell us about your residence. You are in the Herndon suburb,
Mm-hmm.
but what kind of home do you live in?
Well, it's a pretty large home. We fell prey back in the 70s to, we had 3 children, and we lived in Arlington, moved out to Fairfax County for the larger home for less money.
Sure.
Not with energy consciousness at all at the time. So it's a 5-bedroom home. It's not a mansion, but it's, you know, by most folks' standards, it's pretty large.
It's a single family home, however.
Single family home.
Established, okay.
Right.
Yeah.
And one good thing about the home is that it has a profile so that the rear roof faces the south, which optimizes its applicability for solar power.
Good. Now, Ben, talk a little bit about what your company does then in terms of responding to homeowners who might want to turn to solar.
Right, we are a renewable energy company. We are focused on photovoltaic solar because it's one of the most affordable technologies for homeowners and businesses in Virginia. Virginia is the least expensive market now to have solar installed. So there is a growing demand from homeowners, and we basically help with turnkey solutions. There are a lot of choices. We educate also the homeowners. That's actually how we started working with Mr. Lubson. We had a couple of homeowners together who want to understand how they make their homes more energy efficient. And we were explaining how a solar system can help with that. And that was basically the steps then. And the Lubson family then decided getting a solar system installed.
And when you say Virginia is the least expensive,
yes,
what do you
for
mean?
the costs today for the cost to install solar system. And we are talking, when we talk about solar system, we talk photovoltaic, the electric solar system, the solar panels, because they have gone in price really down in the last couple of years. That is an advantage. So financing is more easier now. And this technology, there are many choices, many design choices. So it meets HOA design requirements, although HOAs not any longer in Virginia since a year and a half. They cannot object a solar system in an HOA. And it's what you mentioned before. It's no maintenance here in Virginia, and it doesn't make any noise and has no liquid.
I think an important consideration is that the cost of these systems has really come down dramatically. Okay. When I looked at this 10 years ago, the cost per watt installed was somewhere in the $8 to $9 range. So, and the average system is about 5 kilowatts. So after tax incentives, I was going to pay like $30,000+ to have a system installed, a modest system installed on my rooftop. Yeah. That same system today costs just a little bit over $10,000 after tax rebates.
Yeah.
So,
when we say photovoltaic among the options, what are the other options?
Well, I actually, before I put the solar photovoltaic system up there, I put a solar thermal system, which is basically to heat hot water for my home. Okay. Instead of a large array of panels for electricity generation, I have 2 panels, fairly large, but dedicated to exchanging heat from the roof with the hot water tank in the basement to heat hot water.
Water runs through and down the panel, picks up the heat.
Water would run through if we lived in Florida where
Right.
it didn't freeze.
Oh,
So
sure,
up here
exactly.
in a more cold climate, you need to cycle kind of a glycol solution, kind of an antifreeze solution up
Right.
to the roof, and then exchange that heat from the roof with the water below. It's kind of a copper pipe inside copper pipe
Right.
exchange system.
Yeah. So now, I'm concerned because my house was conventionally built. No special trusses or whatever, it's just a home. What about if I put all these panels up there? Is the roof going to fall in?
No worries. I think that's one of the concerns many homeowners or property owners have. With our company, we had only one case, and it was a historic home where we had to improve the roof structure, and it was really very easy to do.
Yeah.
Solar panels do not add that much weight on a roof because it's an aluminum frame and very lightweight.
Right. What are the materials in a photovoltaic system? I mean, there's aluminum frame, and then what is that glassy looking?
Yeah,
Stuff.
that's a very good question. There are several components involved. Aluminum, glass. The glass is almost like a car windshield. It's hardened. It withstands hail. And with the structural requirements in this area, these solar systems are designed for wind speeds beyond 120, 130 miles. The overall footprint, I think that would be interesting to mention. When people want to do something for the environment or reduce their carbon footprint, since a year and a half, including the production cycle, solar panels have actually, over the whole lifespan, a positive effect on this carbon footprint. So they're really including the production, and I think that's a good thing, because one thing is when a system is installed, it runs 25, 30, 40 years without any repair, maintenance cost or any pollution effect. But the transportation and production should be included in the whole life cycle.
Right.
And the good news is there are 3 leading manufacturers of solar panels now in the US. And so you can actually literally locally source your solar equipment.
How locally would you get a panel here in Virginia?
Giving you an example, there's one company in Georgia. They have a production facility in Georgia. We as a company, we are vendor independent. What the homeowner prefers, we can source this from the West Coast. We also can source it from overseas.
Right. So the level of expertise to install, this is not a hairy homeowner project. This is something you need some expertise to accomplish.
Yeah, you make a good point. I think that's a good thing in Virginia. There's, for the consumer or the homeowner, there's a healthy competition with certified and qualified solar installation companies. You actually need a certain certification to do this as an installation company. Yeah, I would not consider it a do-it-yourself. There are systems in the past that have been done in do-it-yourself, but these were, many of these homeowners are very skilled engineers or worked in the science field.
Now, part of the issue is orientation, and of course, Chip lucked out because his house, for divine providence, whatever resulted in your
sited just
being,
right.
Found it sited just right. How do you accommodate the lack of location?
That's an interesting question and one of the larger concerns. There's only one place where it is not recommended having a solar system installed. It will be really in a deep forest. We are against cutting trees back just to get some sunlight on a roof. Roof exposure or orientation, anything between east, south, or west works. As Chip pointed out, south gives you the best output or the best energy efficiency, but it can be installed in any of the 3 orientations. So there are rarely homes which have not a good solar exposure.
Now, this is an oversimplification, but I guess with the southern exposure, you just kind of lay it flat. With other exposures, you give it a tilt or an angle?
No, actually not. In the past, where solar panels were not very effective, you had motorized solar arrays following the sun over the day or adjusting the angle to remedy the over-the-year lack of performance. This is not needed any longer. They really are sturdy installed following the roof line, whether the roof is more flat or A perfect angle would be in this area anything between 30 and 45 degrees.
Now, Chip, for heaven's sakes, what do the neighbors say? You put all this stuff up on your roof.
Well, it's generated a fair amount of interest
Yeah.
from the neighbors, and in fact, I've put out a couple requests on a neighborhood listserv, and I've held 3 or 4 meetings at my house to bring people in. Ben comes in and talks to them about the technology. I talk to them about my experience.
Yeah.
So it does generate a lot of interest. There is a little bit of reluctance on some people's part to put solar panels on the front of their homes, facing other homes and facing the street. And I think in some homeowners associations, that was written into the covenants to not be allowed.
Right.
However, I think legally now, homeowners associations cannot prevent that.
Right.
They do, I think, reserve the right to do an architectural review so that people don't put, pink panels on a, something like that.
Yeah.
But I think generally it's generated interest and support more than anything. We do have one neighbor in our we did a group buy with Ben's help where 4 or 5 families pulled together to save on cost a little bit. And one of the families did put their panels on the front of their home. They got a couple funny looks from neighbors, but most of their neighbors, I think, have embraced it and look forward to seeing more of it.
So I suppose the cooperative approach in a neighborhood would be a way to mitigate some of the concern and maybe opposition.
Well, yes, I think it is. There's an interesting question legislatively, I think, from your perspective, and that is that you mentioned a cooperative approach. If there were a neighborhood anywhere in the state of Virginia that had some common space or land where they wanted to put an array and generate some power for the community, illegal in the state of Virginia.
Right,
That's you're probably familiar with that?
Oh, yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
so you see that down in Richmond.
Right.
So that's the kind of thing where solar is in a relative infancy in the state of Virginia. When you drive around, you don't see a lot of solar panels compared to California or Arizona, but a lot of progress to be made there.
Some people generalize to say that Dominion won't let you use solar. But you're an example.
That's not correct.
That's
I mean,
not correct.
if you have a system that is size under 10 kilowatt peak production capacity, Dominion works with you. They worked with me. My system is an 8 kilowatt system. They come in and at no charge, they put a new meter on your home that measures the flow of electricity into your home and out of your home. So when my panels are producing more than my home is consuming, that excess amount is going back into the grid and into my neighbor's home, or it's basically consumed locally.
Right.
So Dominion Power does cooperate with small producers, and I'm very appreciative of that. My last my last 4 bills from Dominion have been $6 a month.
$6 a month.
Because I'm producing, and I'm not only that, but I'm also banking credits so that in the wintertime when the sun is low, I'm not getting as much production and I'm using more than I'm producing, I'll go into those credits that I'm storing up now and continue to pay $6 a month. My goal is to be neutral, to not have any net draw from the grid of power. So.
Your credits come about because of the electricity you feed back to the grid?
Right, exactly, and that's measured precisely. Now,
And
Dominion doesn't know how much I'm consuming in my home, but they do read exactly how much I'm putting back into the grid.
And that does not result in a payment to you. It results in credits that you can draw upon in the off-season.
Correct.
Yeah.
And what they'll do then is after a 12-month period, if I have excess credits, they'll roll those over and allow me to use those in the next year.
Okay.
That prevents me from getting penalized for starting my array on a certain date, when I'm consuming, which I actually did. I installed in November of last year. So they'll roll those credits forward, and I must use them within the subsequent 12-month period.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good. Well, the issue of the cooperative is one that we're pursuing, and in effect what you're doing is you're setting up another power company, so to speak, small as it may
producer,
be.
Right.
And that brings with it a whole bunch of issues, as you might expect. Dominion's made significant investments in its generating capacity, and if we don't use that, we have to figure out some way to offset that investment cost, stranded cost, I refer to them. And it gets very complicated.
It does.
Spend lots of time scratching our head on figuring out how to do that.
Yep.
But not short of that, you can do it cooperatively as you've done in your neighborhood. You just don't work off the same set of panels. You just plan to as a community to go together on doing it.
Yeah, and the advantage there is that when Ben's company comes in and sees that we've got 4 or 5 homeowners, he can reduce his cost, his installation cost, because it's all being done in the same neighborhood. You know, the scaffolding gets used in one house, then the next, so, and he passes that on to us. So this, you know, the new benchmark of an average $3 per watt, you know, Ben was able to get us down below that, meaningfully below that. So passes it on.
So Ben, how does one go about figuring out what you want to help with climate change issues and so on, and you want to be more environmentally conscious, and how do you go forward with looking at solar power options for your home?
There are many choices, and I just want to add 2 points. Dominion is also very helpful with larger installation of solar systems. Since a year they have a so-called agricultural net metering. It doesn't really apply to our structure here in Northern Virginia, but they're also supported at larger properties now. I think this system maximum is 500 kilowatt. It's a fairly great system. As you pointed out, there are issues when the energy gets sent back into the grid, that the grid is capable to handle this. So there are a lot of choices if a business or homeowner wants to make the step. Besides these group buy or solar corp initiatives, I just want to point out too, there's the LEAP organization in Northern Virginia located. There's Virginia Sun. They promote and organize solar group buys for quite a while already. So if a homeowner wants to join a group or is skeptical with an individual solar installer, they can join these group buys or they contact us. So every project or every installation starts with a detailed solar assessment that includes then a very detailed technical analysis, but also financial analysis, because the financing now got a little bit better too. It's very interesting that local lenders are now supportive, like what people did with home equity loans in the past. It's also now applicable to get a solar system installed, so people can reduce after a year their cost for their system below what they pay on their utility bill today. And that's very helpful too. But we provide this service to get detailed analysis for their systems.
One interesting point is that you don't want to put a new solar system on an old roof, right? So I actually had redone my roof about 5 years before putting this array on, so I was in pretty good shape. But I think Ben, I think this is correct, you can actually include the re-roofing of your home with a solar installation as part of the same project and get the tax credit?
To a certain degree.
Okay.
To a certain degree, yes.
Yeah.
And
let's talk a little bit about that, because I live in a home with cedar shake roof. Okay. I understand now there are options that can be accommodate to cedar shake.
There are other options if the roof type does not really support it and you do not want to remove these type of cedar shingles. You can have a ground mount installation or pole mount. These are other options too. Interesting enough, solar panels are so effective today that at commercial installation, they're actually at some buildings vertically installed, like almost like a siding. So there are options.
I understand too that there are actually methods for putting them on a cedar shake roof.
Yes,
Yeah,
because if the roof, it needs to be made sure that your roof at the moment is still structural healthy enough, and then once the solar panels are installed above the roof, they actually kind of protect the roof.
Right. Well, so all that is part of an initial decision making, that assessment about what the options would be in terms of your roof and your structure, the kind of panels you would install, the financing and all that. What are the tax benefits or the tax gains or whatever that you can take advantage of?
You want to?
Well, yeah,
You go ahead.
I know that the biggest one is obviously the 30% federal tax credit. So if you put a $15,000 system in, you're going to get $4,500 in tax relief off of your return for that year that you did the installation. So that's the most significant. Fairfax County also allows you to apply for some personal property tax relief, which I've done. I don't think it's very substantial, but it's meaningful amount of money that you'd want to apply for. And then there's a third thing that you can do where you actually, when you generate a megawatt of power, which is 1,000 kilowatt hours, you qualify to, you earn what is called an SREC, which is a, what is it? Solar Renewable Energy Certificate. And there are markets out there where these SRECs trade. So if you register your power production with an organization, currently the closest one that allows us to register is in Pennsylvania, then you will basically have title to an SREC that has value on this market. The value is not so great right now, but who knows where that market heads in the future.
I guess the theory behind that is that you become a generator and the power that you generate has value, so you can certify that, so to speak.
Yeah.
What's the future going to be?
I think the future is people compare the renewable energy changes happening right now all over the world. They compare it a little bit to the IT revolution. I would call it more like a renewable energy evolution. So here for Virginia, I see the trend is really local energy sourcing, whether it's residences or you have an HOA which has common grounds, pool houses, club houses. For businesses, it's basically, they do this for many years. Looking at companies like Costco, Amazon now installs its own concentrated solar power plant in the south of Virginia. Apple Computers, I think they have started changing the opinion about that solar can be a good part in the mix of renewables running data centers. They run since 3 years a data center in North Carolina, 100% on renewables. That was before unheard of. So the business communities embrace renewables, homeowners, the HOAs. So I think things are coming around. The financial industry is supportive because there's also, I think, good news talking about the future. A couple of months ago is the first study for the real estate market here in the mid-Atlantic area has shown that if you own an energy efficient home, that the sales price can be up to 7% higher than the comparable home which is not energy efficient. Most of these homes were equipped with solar. So that is also an extra addition to the savings. If you need to sell your house one day, that's helpful.
I'm amazed when I fly into Dulles Airport to see the number of flat roofs around in the industrial areas. There's a lot of potential places out there to put these panels. And how we get over, for example, local government using school rooftops. Again, we're talking about relatively limited amount of weight. You're not talking about changing it structurally, how we can get to that point, but that is coming about. So, good. And what would you say, Ben, about your experiences in working with Dominion? Is that, for some people, start off with a mindset that that's a barrier, but you haven't found that to be true?
Personally, I think Dominion is helpful because I think they understand also the signs of the time. We also work with the co-ops. There are other utility service provider or utility providers. The process to get a system connected to the grid, it's all pretty standardized. So I think there are no large problems we haven't experienced in the past. It's paperwork reasonable, but I think that's for every kind of, when you want to do modification to your property, you have to go through normal legal processes. Coming back to your roof space, you made a very good point. There's enormous capacity on commercial buildings, office buildings in this area here. The local energy generation would be really helpful on a long run, and there are different opinions about it, but my opinion is it would also help Dominion as the grid owner, reducing some of their upgrading infrastructural costs, because local power generation, whether it is solar, whether it's whether it's wind, it really helps. And with the commercial real estate owning so many office buildings here in Northern Virginia, I think there's something at the horizon, hopefully coming sooner than later. It's called PACE. It stands for Property Assessed Clean Energy. It has been approved in Richmond, as you probably know. The model we pursue in Virginia is using private funding. What it actually means that the cost for energy efficiency upgrades, whether it's solar, new windows, LED lighting, it's tied to the property tax. The loan is paid off through the property tax assessment. And when the building is sold, the new owner accumulates this loan. So energy efficiency measurements pay off after 1 month.
Now, unfortunately, we're going to have to leave it there because our time is out. But ladies and gentlemen, I want you to pay attention. Chip lives near Reston. He has a home that now is essentially generating its own electricity. He worked with Dominion in order to do that. Ben's in the business of doing this. So solar is not something of the long distant future. It's here now. So it's an opportunity for us to take a look at the options, as I will be doing, as I hope you will as well. Thank you for being with us on the show on Virginia Report. Thank you guys for being here. Good night, everyone.
Thanks, Ken.
Lot of information that was not taken